Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Nelson, here on this amazing Wednesday, Jesus, I got every day of the week wrong. Wednesday afternoon. It's almost Halloween, and I'm very excited for that. I do have plans for that, but that's not what we are here to talk about today. We're here to talk about basketball. So, in this first segment, we are going to talk about the 76ers, but the NBA concluding their investigation on the 76ers and hitting them with a fine. And I'll go ahead and I'll explain why and what exactly the 76ers did wrong, what they violated in order to earn that fine from the NBA. Then in the second segment, we're going to talk about the Dallas Mavericks beating the Minnesota Timberwolves behind a Kyrie Irving masterclass performance in the second quarter. And then in the third segment, we're going to talk about the Warriors beating the Pelicans at home after being down by 20 points. And then in the fourth segment, we're going to do a little bit of a recap on the rest of the games that ended up going down in that yesterday night. So I'll go ahead and I'll do that in the fourth segment. And then we also have a special fifth segment at the end of the fourth segment, so be sure to stay tuned for that if you guys are interested. Before I begin, however, I'd like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show. Whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, something that you've been dying to share, we're all ears. And if you really want your comment or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. If Super Chat's not really your thing, then that's totally fine. You can always use the link displayed below the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. Either or really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. So let's go right ahead and get into the first segment, which is going to be about the 76ers. Let me just go ahead and pull up these. That was a mistake. I didn't mean to do that. Let me just go ahead and pull up these slides real quick, and just so that way you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. And everything is just messing up for me now. That is fantastic. You love to see it. Apologize for that. But anyways, as I was saying, the 76ers, they were under investigation over the last few weeks. And big reason why they were under investigation was due to the inconsistencies on Joel Embiid and his injury status. If you guys don't remember, I covered this a few segments ago where Joel Embiid, it was said that Joel Embiid would not be eligible to play on opening night. Then out of nowhere, it was reported that he wouldn't be eligible to play in the next game. And then out of nowhere, it was reported that he was ineligible to play in the game after that. So it was very, very odd. It's very weird, right? And the next game, this tonight, is actually when Joel Embiid is expected to be eligible to play, but the NBA couldn't help but think that this news was rather odd because he wasn't available against the Bucks, which is a pretty competent team, wasn't available against the Raptors, which I wouldn't say is a competent team, but they were going to play away and not in their home court. And then he wasn't eligible to play against the Pacers, another game that was away. But he was eligible to, and he was said to return against the Pistons at home, the worst team in the entirety of the Eastern Conference. And, obviously that's very fishy. Because it's like, okay, why was Joel Embiid ruled out in all of these other games, but against the worst team in the NBA at home, he's totally fine for? That really does, it was super odd, and not only that, it was very inconsistent. So inconsistent that the NBA decided to conduct an investigation on the 76ers and their organization. So once they concluded their investigation, the NBA ended up fining the 76ers $100,000 for, quote, misrepresenting the health status of star center Joel Embiid. Now, Embiid, like I mentioned before, he was sidelined for the team's first few games with an alleged left knee condition, yet public comments from head coach Nick Nurse and president of basketball operations Daryl Morey did not accurately reflect his injury. While the NBA found that the Sixers injury report did not violate any sort of player participation policy with Embiid's missed games, they determined that the statements about the injury were inconsistent with the league's transparency requirements. And because of that, the team ended up getting fined. Not just Embiid, the entire team ended up getting fined. And to be honest with you, this is like pocket change. Obviously, to people like us, people like me, and just normal people going about their everyday lives, this is a huge fine, and this is something that not many people will be able to pay directly on the spot for obvious reasons. But this is a multi-billion-dollar company, a multi-billion-dollar organization, and fining them just $100,000 is really, really light. Like it's like pocket change to these guys. It's not like it's going to encourage them to want to play their players anymore, because it's like, not only that, but this is a message to the rest of the league. So it's like, okay, this is the fine if we inaccurately report on his injury. This is pocket change. They got this. Like they could pay it for themselves, honestly, and it would be fine. But this is, and I don't think this is a good look for the NBA. If this was anybody else, like if the commissioner was maybe David Stern, for example, I feel like this fine would have been in the millions, because again, this is a fine directed at the organization, not directed at a player, and that's just pocket change to these guys. So I don't think that, while I do agree with the fine and I do think they should have been fined, maybe they should have been fined for a little bit more than just $100K, even though that's a lot of money compared to what I have. It's not a lot of money compared to what they have. So the participation policy, it started last season, so it was made to stop frequent absences of high-profile players from nationally televised games. The rule requires that injuries justifying missed games be substantiated to provide fans and media with accurate information about player availability. And the league investigated the Sixers for this, but the issue was not Embiid's absence, but the misleading public comments about his health. So they didn't necessarily, it was really just what they said in the press conferences that encouraged, that they found something wrong, as opposed to actually violating the player's policy, right? They violated the transparency policy. They did not violate the player participation policy that was recently established. So Embiid, he's obviously the former MVP. He's been vocal about his intention to no longer play in back-to-back games in order to preserve his health following another season-ending injury in last year's playoffs, and he expressed a commitment to managing his workload carefully. This continues a trend of NBA players prioritizing long-term health and playoff readiness over regular season wins. So while I understand the logic in not wanting to play in back-to-back games, I can't help but think that that is absolutely, that is Charmin Ultra Soft right there. That is just, nobody should be even have this in their mindset. If you were to do this back in the day, back in the early 2000s, people wouldn't, they wouldn't even stand for that. Nobody would stand for that. But given Joel Embiid's history and given the fact that he just always gets injured in the postseason, I think people would let this slide just a little bit, but I can't help but think just how incredibly soft this is. Now, his injury misrepresentation. So his recent knee issues align with his cautionary approach, but the NBA's investigation showed that the Sixers misrepresented the nature of his condition. And comments from Nurse and Morey indicated that Embiid was merely undergoing a ramp-up process without specific concerns about his knee, which the NBA found to be inaccurate, and that's where they issued this fine. And the fine emphasizes the NBA's stance on transparency. In a recent press conference, Nurse described Embiid as progressing well and actively involved in 5-on-5 practices, suggesting his absence was just part of an individual treatment plan. Morey's similar comments about Embiid's ramping up status contributed to the league's decision to penalize the 76ers for the inconsistency between their statements and Joel Embiid's actual health status. So it's just they didn't really align all that well. And this is really the problem when you're trying to protect one of your athletes from not just from scrutiny from a lot of the fans. Because let's face it, if there was a serious injury that they didn't tell anyone, like, it would have been a serious problem for the rest of the fans. And, like, again, I think this is just a problem anyway, just not enabling one of your star players to play in these games, because it's like, why are you doing that? And it's like, why? Like, really, it's so confusing to me, because it's like, huh? Like, why? Like, what on earth is that? Like, this just, no, that does not make, that would not fly. Imagine Shaq just sitting out in these never playing back-to-back games. Like, imagine any sort of center back in the day. Like, it's so strange seeing somebody built like this but still being so Charmin's ultra soft. I can't say anything else other than that, because it just does not make any sense to me. Like, he's expected to play later tonight, so we'll see if that holds up, or if he just ends up declaring that he's going to be out. I don't think that's going to happen, mainly because, you know, he's going to be playing at home and he's going to be playing against the Pistons. That should be an easy win for the 76ers, and especially for Joel Embiid. So we'll see sort of how that goes, and we'll see if he if there's an update on his status. But aside from that, we are out of time for this first segment. So now we'll go ahead and go into the second segment, where I talk about the Mavericks beating the Timberwolves in this matchup. You know, Luka Doncic going up against Anthony Edwards, a Western Conference Finals rematch. So we're going to talk about that right after this short break. So be sure to stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be talking about the Mavericks matchup against the Timberwolves. This was a pretty close game up until the very end. And we're going to talk about my thoughts on this game, what exactly happened, what went wrong for the Timberwolves, and what went right for the Dallas Mavericks. Before I begin, however, I do like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, or whether you guys have something that you've just been dying to share. We are all ears. And if you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. Just click on the $ below the chat box and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. Really helps the show. And if Super Chat's not really your thing, then that's fine. You could always use the link displayed below the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about this Mavericks game between the Timberwolves and the Dallas Mavericks. A little bit repetitive, I apologize for that. But this was a really good game. It was full of scorers, and it was full of really, really difficult shots. Like, I mean, in the beginning of the game, Anthony Edwards played phenomenally. He ended the first quarter with, I believe, 24 points. This was the most he's ever scored in a quarter in his entire career. And along with Julius Randle, they were great early on, but Dallas was able to keep this game rather close up until the very end. But aside from that, Julius Randle, he ended the game with 20 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, and then Anthony Edwards ended with 37 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists. The final score, however, was 114 in favor of the Dallas Mavericks. Now, how is it that Anthony Edwards scored 37 and they still lost? 2 words. Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving had a masterclass of a game in the second half, and it was a much-needed masterclass for the Dallas Mavericks. And Luka could not get a three-pointer to fall in this game until it was time to hit the final shot. And Luka Doncic ended the game on a dagger three-pointer, and that was the only three-pointer that he ended up making in this game. He shot 1 for 8 from 3 and 10 for 27 from the field. Very, very inefficient. But, I mean, Kyrie Irving, he did what he had to do in this matchup, and he ended the game with 35 points, 13 of 23 from the field, and 6 of 8 from 3. Again, a much-needed masterclass coming in from Kyrie Irving to seal this win. And some other key players in this game, P.J. Washington ended up going 7 for 13, 3 of 6 from the field. Daniel Gafford did not miss a single shot, went 6 for 6 and 2 for 2 from the line. And that was the other scores for the Timberwolves. Like, you know, they were there. It's not like they did not have anybody coming off the bench that didn't score. However, DiVincenzo has not been a really good asset to this team, or as good of an asset as I thought he was going to be with this team. He's 1 of 6 from the field, and he shot 1 of 5 from 3, which is a little bit uncharacteristic based off of what I was seeing from him on New York. And the rest of the players, Naz Reid ended the game with 14 points, 5 of 8 from the field. Jaden McDaniels ended with 13 points, 6 for 11 from the field, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker ended the game with 4 for 7 from the field and 11 points. Now, obviously, you know, this was not enough to deal with Luka Doncic and that dagger that he hit in the end. Like, the game was close. The Mavericks were up by 1, and then Luka Doncic sort of had to put the game away with that final shot. And that's just what Luka Doncic does. Now, I picked the Timberwolves to win this matchup. I thought that they were going to, you know, try and get revenge on the team that ended up bouncing them out of the postseason and preventing them from making the finals. But, of course, because I was the guy that picked them, that did not end up happening. And, of course, on the day, I ended up getting 2 games wrong. I mean, of course, it always happens. It's like, always, at least you got to get 2 games wrong. Always. I don't know what it is. I don't know why this happens, but it's like, I can never go perfect. It's always just that 1 or 2 games. I don't get it. And this was one of those games that it really, really shocked me towards the end. Because, again, like, this was winnable. Like, they 100% could have won in this matchup. They really could have. And it was all the way up until the end where the game was rather close. And, I mean, Anthony Edwards, while he did score, 24 or something in the first quarter, the rest of the game was a little bit mediocre for him. I mean, compared to what he did in the first. But then again, what he did in the first was absolutely ridiculous. So, really, you can't blame Anthony Edwards, and you can't blame this game on Anthony Edwards. Finishing with 37 points in 37 minutes, that's more than enough. Not to mention he shot 7 for 13 from the field, which is also more than enough. But the team as a whole, like, from an individual standpoint with this team, it doesn't seem like they are really taking or making that many threes. They did shoot 48% from the three-point line in this matchup, but Anthony Edwards was one of 4 players, that ended up taking 5 or more threes. Now, Julius Randle made 3 of his three-pointers, which is great, but from the field, 7 for 13, it didn't really seem like I expected him to take a little bit more shots than that. But again, I'm not going to knock Julius Randle off of having 20 points because, again, that's very impressive. But this Timberwolves team, they might be a little bit worse without Karl Anthony Towns. And go figure. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns has been on the roster for the longest time, and now this is the first time that they don't have it. And I'm really, like, I'm incredibly shocked. Like, really, I'm super, super shocked, because it's like, what on earth is what on earth is this? Like, this genuinely does not make any sense. I'm actually going to blame it on the Kyrie Irving masterclass, honestly, because, like, he just went off in the entirety of the second half. And it's like, it's really, really tough to guard Kyrie Irving, especially when you have a team like this whose only real competent perimeter defender is Anthony Edwards. And even then, there are times where Anthony Edwards' defense does get tested, mainly because, you know, he spends a majority of his time on offense and he doesn't have the stamina to produce it, right? But, you know, most of the time, this would, I don't think the Timberwolves, they really have enough scoring power in order to match up against these Mavericks. Like, that was really the big issue in this game. And what makes this even, like, not necessarily all that much crazier, but what makes it even worse is that Klay Thompson in this matchup did not have a very good game. He shot 2 for 7 from the field and 2 for 7 from 3 for 7 points. So, like, just imagine what they could have done had they, just imagine what they could have done had Klay Thompson actually had a pretty solid scoring night. Because, I mean, he was missing a lot of shots. This was one of his off days, and we've come to get used to Klay Thompson having a couple of off days, but there are going to be games where he doesn't have these kind of off days. And I really don't know why I ended up picking the Timberwolves in this matchup. In hindsight, it was such a dumb move. It was really like, I don't know why I just can't get all of these games right for once. I just want one day where I get these games right. And speaking of not getting games right, we're going to have to go into a break and then talk about the next game on this list, which is the matchup against the Warriors and the Pelicans. Now, I said that I was going to pick the Pelicans in this matchup, and of course, I should have known better. And this one is even more shocking. Like, the loss in this matchup between the Pelicans and the Warriors is even more shocking than what I first thought. So I'll be right back after this short break to cover that. Be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be talking about the matchup between the Warriors and the Pelicans. And we're going to go right into this. So, as you guys know, originally I picked the Pelicans to win this matchup. I was hopeful that the Pelicans would be able to come out with this win and be able to not really surprise the Warriors, but sort of make the Warriors and their lives difficult. And to make matters worse, Stephen Curry was not playing in this game. Andrew Wiggins was also not playing in this game. So that's two of the team's main offensive scorers not participating in this competition. So you would think that the Pelicans would be able to come out with this win, right? I was wrong. And of course, in hindsight, I can't really say that I should have known any better, because like this is something that you just cannot predict. Like this is something that just that really just happened. I mean, the Pelicans, they started out really nice. They ended up leading the game 31-14 in the first quarter. But then after that first quarter, they just collapsed. They got outscored by double digits in every single quarter after that. Like, in the second quarter, they got outscored 33-20. In the third quarter, they got outscored 40-28. In the fourth quarter, they got outscored 37-27. Like, this was just a complete collapse coming in from the Pelicans in this matchup. They were up by so much early on in the game, and then it ended up turning out to be nothing. And it's like, how do you let this happen? I genuinely don't know how you let this happen. And Brandon Ingram, he ended the game with 30 points in this matchup. He shot 12 for 17 from the field, 3 of 6 from 3, 30 points. That's a very, very good game coming in from Brandon Ingram. 4 rebounds and 2 assists along with that. Again, a very good game. Zion Williamson, he ended the game with 31 points, along with 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 12 of 19 from the field, 1 of 2 from 3. Again, very good game coming in. But the problem was the rest of the roster. The rest of the roster essentially forgot how to play basketball. There's no other way to say it aside from that. I mean, the only other good player was Yevis Missy, and even then, he only scored 9 points for the Pelicans. He was 1 of 5 from the line, which is really not ideal, but he was 4 of 6 from the field. You can't really ask for much more than somebody like that. And it's just the rest of the roster, they did not play well at all. CJ McCollum, 2 for 8 from the field, 5 points, only taking 8 shots, and even then, only making 2 of those 8 shots, that is abysmal. That is really, really bad. And Jose Alvarado, he's not really that much of a scorer, but he ended up going 2 for 4 from the field with 6 points, 2 for 2 from the line as well. It's just the rest of the roster did not perform nearly as well as I expected them to. The only 2 players that ended up being in double figures in this matchup were Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram. And you just can't allow that to happen, especially against a team that doesn't even have 2 of their best players on the roster, arguably 2 of their best players. I mean, you can make the argument that Andrew Wiggins is now a third option as opposed to a second option now, given the resurgence of Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield in these games for the Warriors has been absolutely phenomenal. I mean, in 29 minutes, Buddy Hield ended the game with 28 points, was also able to shoot 9 of 18 from the field and 7 for 11 from 3. That is hyper efficient from 3 with Buddy Hield. And not even just for Buddy Hield standards, but any player standards. That is incredibly efficient. Then there was also Lindy Waters III, who ended up finishing the game with 21 points, 8 for 13 from the field, 3 of 7 from 3. Again, really solid performance coming in from these players. Brandon Podziemski, 8 for 18, 19 points. Jonathan Kuminga, it should also be noted, Jonathan Kuminga was reported to come off the bench in this matchup, which is really, I don't understand exactly what the Warriors are doing with Jonathan Kuminga. Like, they clearly do not have a plan for Kuminga and what exactly they're going to do with him. I mean, they don't have an extension plan for him, and now they're going to bench him despite the fact that he's actually a pretty solid player. I genuinely don't understand what they're doing with these Jonathan Kuminga and the rest of the team. But at the end of the day, Moses Moody ended up going 6 of 8 from the field, 5 of 6 from 3. You could make an argument that this was just some really good shooting luck coming in from the Warriors, but again, the field goal percentage and the 3-point percentage coming in between both of those teams, it wasn't really that much of a difference maker. Now, the big problem, however, was the lack of 3-point attempts coming in from the Pelicans. They only took 22 3-pointers and then they made 9 of them. But the Warriors, they took 46 3-pointers and they made 21 of them. When there's a team shooting and making 21 3-pointers and you're only making 9, that is extremely difficult to beat. It's very, very difficult to beat. Not to mention the fact that the Warriors, they ended up having way more possessions than the Pelicans in this matchup, way more chances to shoot the ball than the Pelicans in this matchup. And on the Warriors side, Kyle Anderson did not play well at all, but that wasn't really, it wasn't a main factor for this game. I was very, very shocked to find out that the Warriors, they did not play Stephen Curry in this matchup, and they did not play Andrew Wiggins in this matchup, and they still were able to win without a problem. This is really, really bad. Just awful. I'm sorry to say this, but this is awful. for the Pelicans. And this is definitely going to move them down in the power rankings a lot. But for the Warriors, I'm actually a little bit scared because this team, this franchise, they refuse to go away. I don't understand it. They just refuse to go away. When you think they're not going to be good in a year, then they shock everybody. I don't understand what this team's got going on. I don't know what's in their Gatorade. I don't know what's in their water. I don't know what the GMs are cooking, but it is absolutely ridiculous. Just the amount of success that they've been able to have, not to mention just how they've been able to peddle that success with the rest of their stars. I mean, Steph Curry sitting out and you still win? And even then, Steph Curry, when he was playing in these games, he wasn't even playing well in a lot of these games. And yet the team was still able to win. I don't understand how they do it. I just don't. Like, it's maddening. It's incredibly maddening because it's like every single time that I think that the Warriors are going to go away, they don't go away. They just do not. I don't get it. It upsets me. It really upsets me. And the Pelicans made me look really dumb in picking them with to win this game. I mean, they had everything for them. They had everything that they needed to go for them. They had a 30-point game from Brandon Ingram. They had a 30-point game from Zion. They had Steph and Andrew Wiggins benched, not playing in this game, and they still ended up losing. I don't even know. Like, even if DeJounte was playing in this game, I still think this game would have either been close or the Warriors would have still somehow found a way to win. I don't get it. I don't know. I don't understand. I just don't. Like, this is so confusing for me. I'm baffled. And the fact that I got 2 games, it's literally just like, it's a curse. I think I'm cursed, guys. I think every single time I am destined to get at least 2 games wrong. And I think that is a curse. That is a curse that is going to befall unto me. I don't know what it is. I don't know why, I don't know how, I don't know when, but it just always happens. Who, what, where, when, and why. I just don't get it. I really don't. But that's really all that I have to say about this matchup. Again, I'm incredibly shocked at the results of this game, and I'm incredibly shocked at how constant the Warriors have been able to be good. Like, I mean, it's ridiculous. Even when they lose Klay Thompson, they get a really fresh replacement in Buddy Hield. Now, Buddy Hield's defense isn't all that great, but with how he's been shooting the ball, it really doesn't matter at this point. Because it's like, okay, he can't guard one of the players. It doesn't matter. He can cancel out their scoring with his own scoring. And that's really the end goal that you sort of expect from somebody who is not that dominant on the offensive side of the ball. Like, it's really just, it's maddening. It's incredibly maddening to me because it's like, how on earth are you guys able to be this consistent for this long? It's really just like, go away. But that's all that I have to say. So we're going to go ahead and go into our break. And then after the break, we're going to conclude our NBA recap with the rest of the 2 games that ended up going down last night. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the 4th segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this 4th segment, we're going to be doing a recap of the rest of the games that went down last night. So I already talked about the games that I got wrong, the Mavericks winning and the Warriors winning. So here, of course, I ended up getting these 2 games right. And so we might as well go ahead and talk about the rest of those games that ended up happening over the weekend. So, well, not over the weekend, yesterday night. Now, first game that we're going to talk about is the Brooklyn Nets losing to the Nuggets. I mean, This should have been a clear-cut win for the Denver Nuggets, but this game was close. In fact, it was so close that it ended up going into an overtime. And, of course, the Nuggets, they ended up prevailing in overtime, winning 144-139. Jokic, of course, had another masterclass of a performance, 29 points, 18 rebounds, 16 assists, another triple-double for this man. It's just, he does it so effortlessly. I understand that he did play in some overtime games. He did not shoot a three-pointer in this matchup, but regardless, he still ended with 29 points and was able to shoot 11 for 13 from the line. Russell Westbrook also finally had a good game in this matchup. He ended with 22 points, 5 of 12 from the field, but 10 for 10 from the line, which is rather shocking for Westbrook standards. He also ended the game with 5 assists, a steal, and a rebound. So, again, about time that Russell Westbrook actually has a good game. And the rest of the players for the Nuggets, they also played really well. And that's sort of what I expected, because the Nets, while they might be solid on the offensive side of the ball, they really lack a solid defensive player, aside from Nicholas Claxton. And even then, you need some competent perimeter threats when you're going up against a team like the Denver Nuggets, who love to shoot the three-pointer a lot, and the Nets just didn't have that. They were able to make the game interesting, forcing this into an overtime with their scoring, because they also had considerable amount of scores, but more on that a little bit later. Michael Porter Jr. ended the game with 16 points. He shot 6 for 11 from the field, 4 of 7 from 3, so not really the best performance coming in from Porter, but still rather solid. Jamal Murray, 8 for 19 from the field, 2 of 7 from 3, 24 points. As I love to make jokes about Jamal Murray, he usually only shoots well when he plays against the Lakers. And I don't know why. I don't know how, but that's just a thing. And Aaron Gordon, he ended the game with 24 points, 8 for 11 from the field, 7 for 7 from the free throw line. And let's see, those were, aside from Christian Braun, who also ended the game with 12 points, all of those players were the players that ended in double figures for the Denver Nuggets. Now, on the Brooklyn Nets side of things, Dennis Schroeder ended up being the leading scorer for the team. He ended the game with 28 points and 14 assists. Very solid performance coming in from Dennis Schroeder. 10 of 18 from the field, 5 for 11 from 3. And I thought that Cam Thomas was going to be the scorer for this game, like the leading scorer for the Brooklyn Nets, but he was only off by 2 points. He scored 26, 8 for 22 from the field, 1 of 8 from 3. A pretty off shooting night for Cam Thomas, but aside from that, 26 points is 26 points. And coming in from the rest of the starting lineup, Cam Johnson ended the game with 20 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. He also shot 7 of 14 from the field and 6 of 10 from 3. So pretty solid outing for Cam Johnson in this game as well. Now, let's see, looking at the rest of the starting lineup. Dorian Finney-Smith, he ended the game with 17 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists, 5 for 11 from the field, 1 of 7 from 3. So not really that efficient shooting the ball from 3, but everywhere else he was just fine. And the really big bugaboo that I'm actually pretty surprised about with this is how Claxton, he wasn't starting, but Noah Clowney, he played 16 minutes in the starting lineup, and he only ended with 0 points. 0 for 2 from 3. I don't know why Claxton wasn't starting, especially considering how he ended the game with 16 points, 12 rebounds, and also was able to go 8 for 9 from the field. Very, very efficient night coming in from Claxton. And he was also able to finish with 3 blocks along with that. He did end up fouling out in this game. He got 6 personal fouls. And but aside from that, there was also Zaire Williams coming off the bench for Brooklyn. 18 points, 4 assists, 3 rebounds. And he also ended up shooting 7 for 8 from the field, 4 of 5 from 3. So it was a really close game. These players played really well. It's just they could not close it out. That was really the big problem with this team and the matchup against the Nuggets. And the Nuggets, they are a team that's notorious for closing out. Not so much this season as they were in previous seasons, but that's sort of what made the Nuggets really deadly. the fact that they're able to close out big games. And while I'm not saying that this was a big game, this was a game that went into overtime, so there is significant pressure to close out in this matchup. And that's really like the big takeaways that I got from this game. They shot similar from the field. They both shot around 51%, but the 3-point percentage coming in from the Nuggets was the big difference. I mean, they shot 48% from the 3 compared to the Nets shooting 38% from 3. Despite this, however, the Nets ended up making more 3-pointers than them because they took more 3-pointers. But still, it wasn't enough to go up against this team. This team really, they won it in overtime, obviously. But it was a really close win because in overtime, the Nuggets scored 19 and the Nets, they scored 14. So it was really, really close all the way up to the very end. And where it really sort of, where it really went wrong for the Nets in this matchup, it was in the beginning. Once Jokic made those free throws, then they went on a little bit of a run, which increased the score all the way up to 133 to 127 up until the very end. And then they've just been able to hold on to that lead all the way up until OT and continue scoring. Meanwhile, the Brooklyn Nets went a little bit stagnant and started missing a couple of shots. And the Nuggets, they were just rolling offensively, and they capitalized on that. So that's really the end of that game. Now, the next game on this list, another game that I ended up picking right, but again, it was against the Utah Jazz. The Kings, they ended up destroying the Utah Jazz in this matchup. It was a pretty easy win for them all around. They won with a score of 113 to 96. The Jazz couldn't even crack into 100 points. They did play really well in the fourth quarter. However, that third quarter and along with that first quarter was the big difference maker in this game between the Kings and the Jazz, because the Kings, they ended up outscoring the Jazz 34 to 22 in the first and then 29 to 14 in the third quarter. Now, as JJ Redick said, when the Lakers only scored 14 points in a quarter, scoring only 14 points in a quarter is unacceptable. And it's really difficult to win a game when you're scoring like that and the other team is scoring in the 20s. Now, for the Jazz and their matchup, Lauri Markkanen did not play well in this matchup at all. He only played 17 minutes, however, and then he only got 7 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist. And let me just go ahead and look at his shooting percentages. Let me see. He shot 3 for 5 from the field. Not entirely sure. I was unable to watch this game because it wasn't a nationally televised game, so I'm not entirely sure exactly what went down. Jordan Clarkson, he ended the game 8 for 16 from the field, 21 points. John Collins, he ended the game 7 for 16 with 18 points. And let's see, what's his name? Kyle Flipowski, he ended the game with 12 points, 5 of 10 from the field. I believe that in this matchup as well, there was a player for the Utah Jazz who ended up succumbing to an injury in this matchup. Let me just go ahead and, yeah, exactly. So, let me just wait for this ad so that way I can accurately report it. Give me just 1 second. So, it's rumored that Taylor Hendricks is going to be out for the season after a leg injury in this matchup, and this is his second year, and he'll reportedly miss the remainder of the 2024-2025 season after suffering a fractured right fibula. So that could also play into effect as to why they ended up coming up short in this matchup. But again, I don't think it would have mattered because the Kings, they're supposed to be the better team in this matchup. Of course they are supposed to be the better team in this matchup. Sabonis ended the game with another double-double, 28 points, 11 rebounds. DeMar DeRozan, he ended the game with 20 points, 8 assists, along with 4 rebounds. He shot 9 for 14 from the field. And Sabonis, he shot 13 for 18 from the field. De'Aaron Fox, 19 points, 8 for 15 from the field, 1 of 2 from 3. And he also was able to record 5 rebounds along with 6 assists. The entire starting lineup for the Kings ended in double digits, which is exactly what you need in not just this game, but in every single game as well. And let me just see. Keegan Murray, he ended the game with 14 points. He did not shoot the ball that well, 6 of 14 from the field, 2 of 7 from 3. Malik Monk also did not shoot the ball that well in this matchup, 2 for 11, 7 points. But regardless, you win by a mile, you win by an inch, and here they won by a mile, a win is a win. So really, again, this was rather expected. I did not really expect the Kings to lose in this matchup. The Jazz, they are one of the worst teams in the NBA right now. They're, aside from the Pistons and the Wizards, arguably, I think they're probably going to be dead last in the entire Western Conference when the season is concluded. And I don't really see anything changing for this Jazz team, at least in this year, which really begs the question, why are they keeping Markkanen and why are they wasting his talents? But they're expecting to rebuild, especially in this draft when Cooper Flagg is supposed to be phenomenal and is supposed to be an amazing athlete going into this draft. So that's probably exactly what they're expecting and what they're hoping to get out of this draft. But there's really not much that has to be said. These matchups and these outcomes were sort of expected coming in from both of these teams. And I expected that the other games would end up being right too, but that ended up not being the case. But that's aside the point. So now we're going to go into everyone's favorite section, the fifth section, where I give my predictions for this game. I'll most likely end up picking 2 wrong, so we'll go ahead and see. But I'll be right back after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned. And we are back with the fifth and the final segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this final segment, we are going to be doing a prediction on which teams are going to end up winning tonight's games. And I've been doing this a lot in these fifth segments. We have a lot of games to cover. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 games that are going to be going down tonight. And we're going to go ahead and pick a winner a team that I think is going to end up winning all of these games. So, first game on the list. The Lakers are going to match up against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, I really, really want to pick the Lakers to win in this game, but based on how the Cavs have been playing, they're 4-0 so far. They've beaten two bottom feeder teams in their schedules. The two bottom feeding teams being the Pistons and the Wizards, but then they ended up beating the Knicks in a rather close game. But my gut feeling, I really think that the Cavs, they have the best matchups to go up against the Lakers. I think Jared Allen is going to be a really solid matchup for Anthony Davis, and I think Evan Mobley is going to be a solid matchup against LeBron. Again, anything can happen in these games, but I pick Cleveland to come out on top in this game. I expect the game to be close, but they do have the good matchups. Not to mention, the Lakers don't really have much perimeter threats to stop Garland or Donovan Mitchell in this game. So I think that the Cavs are going to end up coming out on top in this matchup. I hope that this is a game that I'm wrong about, just because LeBron and the Lakers and all that stuff. This is LeBron's former team, so I expect he's going to get a warm welcome inside of Cleveland. But again, I think that this is going to be a game that Cleveland inevitably wins. Now, the Knicks, they're going to match up against the Heat. The Knicks, they've gotten off to a really slow start, And despite this, I'm still going to go ahead with my gut, and I'm going to pick the Knicks to win in this matchup. I think that overall they're just a better team than the Miami Heat, and I think that their players can end up outperforming the rest of Miami Heat's stars and role players as well. I know that Miami is going to be playing at home in this matchup, but still, I just think that the Knicks are going to end up prevailing in this game. Now, next game on this list, the Nets, they're going to end up playing the Memphis Grizzlies. I think the Grizzlies are going to easily beat the Nets in this matchup. The Nets, they're going to be a rebuilding team. They're trying to, I wouldn't say that they're trying to lose every game, but at the same time, they aren't really looking to win championships this year. And the Grizzlies, on the other hand, depending on Ja Morant's injury status and depending on all that, regardless whether Ja Morant's in the game or not, I still think that the Grizzlies have enough talent to beat the Nets in this matchup. So that's my pick. I think the Grizzlies are going to end up winning. Next, the Warriors are going to play the Pelicans again in this matchup today. And, I mean, I really, this one is tough. I really don't know. I really, really, really feel like the Pelicans should win in this matchup, but just based off of how they played in the last matchup, I don't know if I really want to pick the Pelicans to win in this game again. Like, I really don't. But I'm gonna go with the Pelicans once again. I'm just gonna be stubborn, and I'm not gonna learn from this. I don't think that the rest of the lineup is going to play as bad as they did against the Warriors in the previous matchup, and I think they're going to sort of learn from the mistakes that they made in yesterday's game, and they're going to go ahead and beat them here tonight. Again, it's very odd. They play back-to-back the same opponents. That's so weird. But yeah, I think that the Pelicans are going to be able to prevail in this matchup. I think so. Now, the Celtics, they're going to be playing the Pacers, and I'm probably going to go ahead and pick the Celtics in this matchup because, I mean, the Celtics, they're just by far the best team in the NBA right now. It's clear cut, and quite frankly, I feel like while the Pacers, they will play at home, I don't really have that much trust in Halliburton. And again, the Boston Celtics, they're just too good of a team, and I really don't think that they're going to end up losing in this matchup. It's going to be on ESPN, so I'm most likely going to tune into the game a little bit, but I think the Celtics are going to end up prevailing in this matchup. Next, the Hawks, they go up against the Wizards. This time, they're going to be playing in the Wizards arena. And I really, really, I would rather pick the Hawks in this matchup as opposed to the Wizards. I don't really trust the Wizards in this matchup. Even though they ended up beating the Hawks in that one game, I think that Trae Young is going to step up his game a lot in this matchup. And on top of that, the Hawks are 2-2 right now, so they have a good chance to win. They got this weird thing where it's like they go a few games above 500 and then they end up going right back to 500. They go a few games below 500 and then they go right back up to 500. So this time I think they're going to end up prevailing in this game and make their record 3-2. And the Wizards are going to continue being one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference. Next, the 76ers match up against the Pistons. Now, it's expected that Joel Embiid is going to be playing in this matchup. Now, whether he does or he doesn't, I don't see any sort of change in the results. I think that the 76ers are easily going to come out and win this game, and regardless whether they have Embiid or not. But having Embiid is obviously going to make them win by a lot more. And I think you'd be crazy to pick the Pistons, but then again, anything can happen in basketball. I just don't have any faith in the Pistons this year. Next, the Raptors, they're going to be playing against Charlotte. I'm going to pick Charlotte in this matchup because Charlotte is expected to... They're going to be playing at home. I also really like what I've been seeing out of LaMelo Ball in these past few games. And while it wasn't really... it wasn't really that good of a game that he played a few days ago, he has been rather consistent. I mean, and it's not even like he played all that bad in his 27-point performance against the Heat. He was just a little bit inefficient in that game, and that's why I think he played less than good in that game. But aside from that, I still pick the Hornets to win in this matchup against the Raptors. I do expect a pretty solid game from Scotty Barnes as well, though. Next, is the Magic against the Bulls. Orlando Magic. I'm sticking with the Magic. I mean, Paolo Banchero is a completely different animal. I know that the Bulls, they're going to be playing at home in this matchup, but again, I just don't think that the Bulls will be able to stop Paolo and the rest of the matchup that is the Orlando Magic. And next game, the Spurs are going to be playing against the Thunder. I think that the Thunder are going to end up coming out on top in this game. Last time that Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren matched up against each other, Victor ended up getting the better of him. But given how Chet has sort of developed into this year and how he's been playing so far, I think that the Thunder will have a better chance of winning in this matchup. And based off of how Chet's been playing and how SGA's been playing, they're two, at the very least, top 5 MVP candidate players right now. I think that they got this. I think that they got this win. And then finally, the Clippers, they're going to match up against the Portland Trailblazers, easily picking the Clippers in this matchup. The Trailblazers, they are, again, one of the bottom-feeding teams, so not really much that has to be said. So those are my picks. I picked the Cavs, the Knicks, the Grizzlies, the Pelicans, the Celtics, the Hawks, the 76ers, Hornets, Magic, Thunder, and the Clippers. And I'm probably going to get 2 of those games wrong, but we'll go ahead and we'll see how it works. So that's all that I have on this segment. That's it for the show. Thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And as usual, we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take, burning question, something you've just been dying to share. If you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $sign below the chat box and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. Super Chat's not really your thing, then that's fine. You can always use the link displayed below the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way, and they really help the show. That's all that I have for you today on this segment and this podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of